Nope. Your microphone.
I'd like to call to order the Oroville Planning Commission / Oroville Historic Advisory Committee meeting of January 27th, 2022 to order. Please call roll.
Commissioner Arasi,
Here.
Commissioner Britton, Commissioner Holland,
Here.
Commissioner Sheard,
Here.
Commissioner Jensen,
Here.
Commissioner Jenkins,
Here.
Commissioner Durling.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Salute and pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we have a oath of office for a new commissioner.
Come down and join me. So if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me.
All right.
I state your name.
I, Warren Jensen,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and that I will faithfully discharge
and that I will faithfully discharge
the duties of the Oroville Planning Commission
the duties of the Oroville Planning Commission
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair.
At this time, anybody willing that wants to address the commission about any items not listed on the agenda, you could come up and let us know what you'd like to say. Is there
Vice Chairperson Jenkins, I do have one speaker, Kay Castro.
Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to absolutely support you. I have been at many of your meetings. I have heard many of your discussions. I have been very disappointed sometimes at how the council has received your decisions. And I want you to know that we are out here in the public supporting you, supporting your decisions, supporting the Historic Advisory Committee as well. And I really value everything that you're doing and the thought processes that you go through. And so that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, that is the only speaker that I have for non-agenda items.
Okay, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Is there any modifications that anybody would like to make? Or we'll open up for a motion?
I motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Please.
Oops. Sorry. Okay. What are we missing? Oh, okay. I apologize. The motion carries with 4 yeses, 1 abstention, and 2 absent.
Thank you. It looks like we are going to move item 2. We're going to continue it until February 24th, 2022, to our next regular planning commission meeting. So we will move on to item 3. Does staff have a report?
Yes, Commissioners, Wes Irvin, City Planner. The item before you is the City of Paris Facade Improvements Project. Because this building structure is in the downtown historic overlay, facade changes do require development review by the Development Review Committee, not necessarily Planning Commission or Historic Advisory Commission review. However, applicant would like to move forward more quickly than waiting for development review, so has consented to open this item to the Historic Advisory Commission for comments and review and possible conditions. This is not a landmark designated by the city. It is not a historic landmark in the state or federal historic registers. The applicant is trying to restore the building back to the facade the way it looked in the 80s and earlier. And Brian Wong, the owner, and Mike Trollander, the architect, are here to discuss the building and to talk to you about what they're trying to do with the city of Paris.
Thank you. The applicant's free to speak if you'd like.
Good evening, and I'm going to have Mike give a word about the concepts and everything that's behind the project.
Hi, I'm Mike Trollander. Actually, I'm not the architect. I'm a urban planner and designer. And I did do some of the design on this. So the idea of what you see in front of you is a phase one. And what we're trying to do is to get the windows done so we can get the inside working. Because we're trying to turn a building on the inside upstairs in April. And so what you're looking at is a window arrangement that from what I can tell was pretty close to, I'm not sure it was original, but it was pretty close to one of the iterations of the building. And we consulted a designer to work on more embellishment to the building. And you'll be seeing that in phase two. And so we're looking at some pilasters and some window treatments. But what we're trying to do now is to get approval on our windows. We'd like to restore the old awnings, which are down in the basement, which are the old rollout awnings.
Know that.
And we're trying to maybe go with a tile program in the bulkhead. That's the area below the windows. But that may switch out in phase two, the tile idea for more embellishment. We're not sure yet. So what we're seeking here today is our fenestration approvals and hanging our old awnings back on, or your advice on that. And the opening you see, if you take that down, that opening you see on the side on Robinson, we suspect there's an old opening there. There's a transom, and it looks like there was an opening. And so we want to restore an opening there because in our phase two, we're going to launch an idea of expanded sidewalk seating on Robinson. And if you look at other downtown that have expanded sidewalk, they actually sacrifice a parking space or two parking spaces to push the sidewalk out on corners in order to get outdoor dining. And so the concept for the corner of this building on the corner tenant is a food and beverage concept. And so that side of the building, we were proposing that we're going to turn into planning a concept of expanded sidewalk, and then that will start the idea of recoding downtown and testing the idea and seeing if we can get it coded and a set of regulations for expanded outdoor dining in Oroville. So that we hope that to be our pilot project, and we thought about launching that last year as just an idea for downtown Oroville, but we really waited with the idea that we're going to find a project to pilot that idea with. And so this one came up, and so there it is. And so anyway, we are hoping that you'll guide us with and improve us where we're at. And the windows are are really high-grade pultrusion windows. They're not vinyl. They're a fiberglass retrofit window of a double hung. These are single hung windows, but they look like double hungs, and they have the same profile and styles of an old wood window, but they're actually fiberglass. So there you go. And so.
And yes, and so we're very fortunate on the site of this project because we're right across from the State Theater. So when we get around to phase 2, we just want to like be very complimentary to the State Theater. There's so much there for us to work with already. So so all those studies are still being done, still being talked about. And when we took on this project, one of the main things that like I was hoping to take on was to kind of like somehow just save the building, because when you look at the building right now, there's a lot of like exterior damage, water protrusion and all that. So once we get to phase 2, the priority is going to be just fixing the building, and then we're going to have to figure out color schemes, repairing the sign and so forth. So anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission to the applicant? I have one. Do you plan on restoring the sign as it exists?
Yeah, so actually there is a group downtown that's already pledged their help, and that's the Oil Dam Cruisers. There's one person that has a body shop here in town, and I know of a sign shop in Chico, so the plan is, yes, they're going to help with the restoration of the sign, and then we'll make sure that all the electricals are in top shape before it's put back up there.
Okay. And as far as staff, you recommend the way to do it so that they don't have to jump through the new?
The new sign ordinance?
Yeah.
Yes, we will monitor that.
Thank you.
I'd like to add one thing on the sign. What Brian, the sign is really important to the identity of the business, because the business is City of Paris, Workshare, City of Paris Cafe. So City of Paris is going to continue with its life under that sign.
So there won't be any trouble just restoring the sign as it is with the new sign code?
Right.
Good.
It'll be a like
That's-
for like.
Okay.
Well, they're not replacing anything, they're just restoring, and the upgrading the electrical does not trigger that.
Okay, awesome.
And I believe this body a number of years ago had identified that they would like to keep that sign as it is.
So the Development Review Committee and this commission, by extension, has the opportunity to add any conditions that they might see fit or not. It's your option.
I'm sure there's codes on whether or not the new awnings are in a good shape, stay in good shape and working order.
So for the facade improvements, the window replacement will go to the building department for review. And then the awnings, I believe just them being secured to the building will need to be reviewed.
Okay. It would be probably like signs or something, though, if they're ripped or anything, they're probably
You mean as far as upkeep?
code enforcement type.
Yes, code enforcement, correct.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant?
Yes. So in the plan,
Wait, there you go.
in the plans that were
I think when it's red, it doesn't work, so you keep your thumb off it. Do it one more time, here. There we go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
So in the plans that you submitted in the packet, it was talking about replacing the brick with some sort of a tile that wasn't mentioned here. Is that not part of the phase 1 that we're talking about here tonight, or?
So like Mike was saying earlier, that might be part of phase 2, because we're not really going to really address the exterior at this point. The brick that you see there, it was added like late 70s or early 80s, so it's not original to the building. So that was just something that, maybe it was a passing fad at one time that somebody wanted to add on. along with the awnings. So we actually want to go back to more of like the historic look, and the awnings themselves will also have that like more original look.
So tonight it's just talking about the awnings and the windows and moving forward with that part?
Possibly the removal of the awnings right now, but not with the final design even, because in order to do some of the repairs, the awnings will have to come off, but it's mainly the windows, so we can get those done and start working on the interior of the building.
If one looks at the State Street, the building across the street with the small spaces that the State Theater owns, there is a tile front there, which might end up being similar to what this looks like.
Mm-hmm. And the awnings on our building will be about the same size.
As the theater?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Plan on changing the color?
Yes, so we're definitely gonna change the color. So the DA's office, I mean, they're very functional, but I don't know who picked the color, and I'll leave it at that.
It was popular for the time.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, is that all the
That's
questions
all,
from
just a
commissions?
fantastic project. Anything we could do to help would be great.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you for the investment, and anything we can do to support bringing this building back up to as much of an original condition as we can make it is definitely something I would support.
Great, thank you. And I also belong to the ODBA, and I know that like there's a lot of questions being raised right now about outdoor seating for downtown, and even traffic circulation, maybe turning some of the one-way streets into two-way streets. So there's all those questions right now. So hopefully, the Downtown Business Group and the Planning Commission can work on that, and maybe I'll engage Mike to help with some of those ideas as well.
Staff is interested in supporting that concept for downtown revitalization, and we have on our list to move forward with the outdoor seating ordinance, so maybe we'll move that higher in the priority list then.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak on this item?
Mr. Chairperson, I do not have any public speaker cards for this item.
Okay, we'll close public comment session. Is there any discussion between commissioners and staff? If not, we'll open for a motion. What type of motion do we?
So,
I think in this case, a motion isn't necessary,
Nope.
so.
if you have no recommendations, then a motion's not necessary.
So no recommendations.
If you have no additional things that you're trying to add, conditions, then you're fine.
Yeah.
Does everybody like the project as written? Okay.
So there's a consensus of the planning commission for them to move forward. Good.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, on to item 4, presentation and discussion about ZC 2106 fences, walls, and screening municipal code amendments. Staff report, please.
Yes, Connor Messler, assistant planner, coming to you from Zoom here. This item is just a presentation on the draft changes to OMC 17.12.020. As those of you who were on the commission remember, back in October 28th last year, the commission adopted resolution P 2021-19 recommending that the city council adopt the proposed revisions. At that time, staff scheduled a public hearing for city council on November 16th, 2021. But due to comments received and potential concern from property owners, staff pulled the item to return to the planning commission for further discussion and a presentation on the proposed changes. In the code, you'll notice in red ink in the attachment that is the change that was recommended by the Planning Commission. So at the last meeting, we discussed limiting the height of fences within the downtown historic overlay to 42 inches anywhere in the front yard. That front yard is considered anywhere from the front property line to the point equal to the building's front facade. So that changes within this code here that you guys recommended. So I will share my screen, get this presentation, and we'll run through that. Okay. I see my screen in the background TV, so we're good. So some of the topics that we'll cover in this presentation, background, we'll go over, why this code change was initiated, the key changes that were made within that, some applicability, what this code applies to, run through some example scenarios, and then have an opportunity just to go back and forth with discussion at the end, any questions that you guys may have. So again, Section 17.12.020, it is the city's regulations for fences, walls, and screening. Staff initiated this change due to the section being inconsistent with the building code and to prevent the future construction, of 6-foot tall fences in the front yard, which can pose a safety risk. In addition, we also saw some opportunities to clarify, provide better opportunities for, property owners to understand the code. On October 14th, the DRC reviewed and discussed the code, made some minor changes, and then on October 28th, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing to recommend City Council adoption. This map here with all the circles and bubbles on it, this code covers every section of Oroville. Everywhere in Oroville, and as you know, is very geographically diverse. You have the foothills and hillside development on the east side, very flat, more new home construction, but also larger rural lots within the Thermalito area, industrial and commercial properties, small lots within the South Oroville area, again, small lots within the downtown area, wide range of different things. And then in North Oroville, you have more multifamily and higher density residences being constructed. So this code is one section of the municipal code that applies everywhere within the city. So it needs to be broad enough to apply within the east side as well as, on the west side. Given that, there are times when the code may not cover exact scenarios. Like most things, people may come up with some grand scheme that doesn't exactly fit within what our codes cover. So that's just something to keep in mind here. We have one code that covers everywhere in Oroville. So some of the key changes made, 7 feet was set as the maximum height for fences. That aligns with the city's adopted building code. Anything over 7 feet requires a building permit. You can no longer construct 6-foot tall fences in the required front yard area. 42 inches is now the maximum, and the Planning Commission recommended a maximum of 42 inches anywhere in the front yard of properties within the downtown historic overlay. And then we also defined decorative features that would be trellises and gates and set a maximum height of 10 feet and a width of 10 feet. So property owners can't think they could make a 100-foot by 10-foot gate and call it a fence. So the code is applicable to all fences and walls, regardless of construction material, unless it's specified within the code. What this means is, you'll often see within the draft code or the existing code, property line shall have a fence, or it shall have a decorative masonry wall, or a solid fence. So there's options within there. When it says a fence, as a property owner, you can install a wood fence, chain link fence, wrought iron, masonry, whatever, unless it specifically states, it must be solid, must be decorative, masonry, something like that. All new fences must be constructed in accordance with the new code. We're not going to be, the code does not require existing fences to be taken down and rebuilt in accordance with the new regulations upon adoption. what, you're not going to see, and I'm not going to speak for code enforcement, but I know they have many other tasks that they're working on. You're not going to see staff running out upon adoption of this code with tape measures and rulers and seeing if your fence is 1 foot too high or 2 inches too close or something like that. That's not going to happen with this code. This is a diagram that is included new within the draft code here that runs through an example scenario. This provides a very good typical perfect world scenario of what may happen. You have your front yard setback, your home built right outside of that front yard setback, or your garage no more than 42 inches in the front, your side yard, the minimum 5-foot landscape, and a fence up to 7 feet, your site distance areas, things like that. Like I said, this provides a perfect world scenario. That's not often the case with properties developed as they are that have deeper setbacks or things that don't quite line up. So this diagram kind of runs through some example scenarios. This red area is your typical, this is an R1 zone. This is your typical required front yard setback, 15 feet. Under the existing code here, oftentimes you can run into scenarios like this where, provided it's 5 feet setback and landscaped in front of it, you can have a 6-foot tall fence here. This is what is currently allowed within our zoning code. This second lot right here provides, again, an example of a perfect world scenario where your house is built right outside that front yard setback. That's where your 6-foot tall fence can begin. Within the perfect world scenario, if someone puts their fence there, that is an example, within the new code is if you want to build it over 6 feet, must be outside of that front yard setback area. Anything over that within this red here must be 42 inches. This third lot is kind of a scenario we ran into at the last planning commission meeting at the house, I believe, on Montgomery and Pine. That is deep, setback here. It has a deeper front yard than what's typically required. So, this property is within the downtown historic overlay with the commission's new recommendation. This property owner can build a 6-foot tall fence as long as if it's outside of that front yard. And again, that front yard starts here at the property line to the point equal to the building's facade. So regardless of, this being the setback within the downtown historic overlay, you could build your fence as long as if it's outside of your front yard, it has to be equal to the front facade. That part may be kind of confusing. If you have questions, we'll come back and we'll run through it and make sure it's clear. And then this is a scenario that came up at DRC where, for example, some properties maybe in South Oroville with the smaller lots where homes encroach on that front yard setback, where if we said you can build a 6-foot tall fence as long as it's outside of that front yard setback, well, then you're going to have a fence, midway through your property, something like that. So this scenario here within the new code is, you can have a 6-foot tall fence provided that it's outside of your front yard setback or at the point equal to the primary building's front facade, whichever is less. That provides an opportunity for property owners who have a smaller lot where their house may be too far forward or it doesn't really meet with our development standards. This point is where the fence, if they really wanted to, construct a 6-foot tall one. So kind of ran through that quick, but we'll come back to this for sure. Running through example scenarios. So, someone just purchased a new home in a subdivision. They don't like the lack of privacy in the backyard. Can they build a taller fence? Yes, they can, provided, assuming that the existing fence is 6 foot tall, they can build an additional 1 foot before a building permit would be required. Anything over 7 feet requires a building permit. Adding lattice to the top of the fence does count towards the total height. So if you have a 6 foot tall fence, you can add a 1 foot tall lattice or another kind of topper before a building permit is required. Oftentimes, some people think because it's 50% opaque, I could see through it. That doesn't count as a fence. It doesn't add height. it's still adding, it's considered a fence. So within our code, if you want to add on a lattice topper and you have a 6 foot tall fence, you can add on that 1 foot before a building permit's required. If I have a 6 foot tall fence in my front yard that was built before the code changed, do I have to take it down now? Provided that the 6 foot tall fence complies with the previous code, meaning that it has that 5 foot landscape setback. It's not obstructing any sight vision triangles. It's not, obstructing driveway vision, things like that. Then no, it doesn't have to come down. The main intent, again, of the fence ordinance is to regulate the construction of new fences moving forward from the time of adoption going forward. I have a small lot in the downtown area, and my side yard fence does not comply with the 5 foot setback area requirement. Will I have to take it down now? This is something that came up, Commissioner Sheard had mentioned it in the downtown area. Many side yards, on corner lots don't quite have enough space for 5 feet, and as staff, we recognize that properties within the downtown area were built, in a time with different development standards. So the fence complied with the previous code, didn't comply with the previous code. Our existing code now is the 5 foot setback area. You still have a fence there. So your fence is still considered to be legal non-conforming. You can keep it as it is. It's not an issue. If your fence is destroyed or damaged, for example, a car drives through it, falls down in a storm, a tree falls on it, you can rebuild the fence as it was before. That would just be treated within our non-conforming code section, which I believe provides about a year after it was destroyed to be reconstructed like for like. I live in the foothills and my property sloped. If I build a retaining wall, can I install a fence on top? So yes, you can. This is where things start to get kind of tricky when you're putting fences on top of walls and things like that. The way our code is, the fence height is measured from the base of the surface above the retaining wall, so where it's flat above the retaining wall, and then up. You can construct a maximum of a 4 foot retaining wall with a 7 foot tall fence before a building permit is required. So oftentimes when property owners have sloped lot, it comes down to maybe a site visit or staff, reviewing this. It's a really case-by-case scenario because developing on hillside development overlay, things like that, comes with special development standards and it can be difficult to do. So this is one that comes with conditions. It's not an easy yes, it's not an easy no. So kind of ran through that quick, but I want to give us plenty of time for questions to run through anything that the commission may have. So.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission? Commissioner Sheard?
Yes. I think it's difficult to have this one-size-fits-all fence ordinance, especially with the historic district. And I know that we're saying that you're grandfathered in. So if you have a 54-inch wrought iron fence in front of your home in the downtown historic district, that's fine. But if your neighbor wants to do one, he can't. So I'm just kind of struggling with the one-size-fits-all, especially when it comes to the historic district, because I do feel like it's so different. Even the side yard offset, like most of them don't have those offsets, so to mandate that if somebody wants to build one, they have to put it 5 feet back just seems unfair. And I also wonder, we're not talking about the type of fence, but isn't there a big difference between a wrought iron fence that you can actually see through that has a nice visual appearance as opposed to just the straight, fortress type fence? Those are a few of my comments.
So it is a limitation of a code that, fits within citywide. I would say currently with our existing fence code, as staff, we do not often run into many issues with individuals wanting to construct fences within the downtown area or, other sections of the city. The main issue comes up, when you have the 6 foot tall fence within your front yard. And that's something, that we wanted to take care of within this one. That it really comes down to limitations. It's I don't think we're at that point yet as a city to start adopting specific development, regulations. We do have our historic overlay fence or historic overlay design standards. That's something that we may, explore at a future date, doing more specific regulations for the DHO. But and Don or Wes may speak more to this too if they have more experience with specific property owners. But the main intent is, getting rid of that 6-foot tall fence. And yes, your neighbor may have a 52-inch wrought iron in the front yard, and you can't do the same. It's something, when the code changes, we can't set individual things for every property. I don't know how to explain it very well. I apologize.
The fallback here is the same fallback as occurred when we were talking about the Maverick sign. We had to take a variance application to the Planning Commission, and we had to make findings that that sign, or in this case, a fence that does not conform, there are justifications for making that fence that way. One of which is that the property owner would be denied a right that exists for other property owners in the area. And then there's a number of other findings about protecting public health and safety and things like that. So the variance is a fallback to violate this code, and it comes before the Planning Commission.
In addition to that, should a fence be erected and it doesn't meet this new code, then a code enforcement case could be opened and the code enforcement staff could have a conversation with those homeowners at that time about addressing the irregularities.
But right now, the way you've written it, in the downtown historic district overlay, they can't be any taller than 42 inches in the front. Okay. I'm confused by the triangle, the 50-foot triangle in the corner. And it says that the fence has to be 30 inches tall. So that 50 feet for some smaller lots, that triangle. Should it really be, am I reading it right, only a 30-inch tall max fence there? That seems...
That triangle is, the city standard for maintaining a clear sight vision area to ensure that when you're in a vehicle, that a fence is not obstructing an oncoming vehicle coming the other way, or pedestrian, something like that. So that was the standards that were established within the code here. Let's see, it's on page 28 of your packet. You can see the multiple different triangle vision areas that are the controlled safety maximum areas.
But does it have to be 30 inches? Can it be 42? Why would it have to be lower there?
That's to ensure that, there's adequate height. So in a small car, you could still see another vehicle coming by. I can't say for certain why, it's 30 inches. Other jurisdictions require no fences. You have to completely avoid that area. Others set different heights. So that was set before this here.
The way I interpret that little drawing there is that if you're going to put a sign inside the vision area, it has to be clear for 30 inches underneath the sign, and then the sign cannot be higher than 42 inches. That's the way I interpret that.
But it says
little
max
drawing.
fence height. So I'm just thinking, if you're on a corner lot and you want to put a neat wrought iron fence all along your corner, you'd have to dip it, down 30 inches. So it just seems like it should be consistent with,
And
that
that's where,
30's kind of low to me.
especially in the downtown historic area, if a wrought iron fence is proposed, that's something, if you want it to be the 42-inch height, a variance would probably come into play because it's not an opaque fence. And so, again, this is that vision triangle for pedestrian and traffic safety so that there's appropriate site availability for vehicles to pull out.
I guess I don't see 12 inches making that much of a difference. And then people have to get a variance. It just seems like
Depending on the size of the vehicle that you're in, though, the 12 inches could make a difference
If it's a solid fence.
if it's a solid
Okay,
fence.
that's why I wish we
So-
could define the types of fences, because it's such a difference if you can see through it and
Yeah.
it's a wrought iron.
Staff would exercise some discretion there to make sure that there would not be an obstruction for vehicles making turns. You know, if you could see through the fence very easily, then there's some discretion there to let it go a little closer.
Okay, so if someone wants to apply for a permit, they come in, they show you their plan, and then you approve. If they could do it that height.
Well, there isn't a permit for this, right? It's you can
There
construct it unless it's,
Outside,
yeah.
yes. So if it's above and beyond the code we're proposing, then they would apply for a permit. If it's within the code, then they don't need a permit.
I have, go on. Well, I don't want to keep asking questions.
Commissioner Jensen?
Okay, I figured it out this time. All right, I just had a clarifying question that I think has already been mostly addressed by Wes and Don already, but I was just going to point out the idea of a variance if there are situations, especially downtown, where you have, could be all myriad of situations that we couldn't plan for, from having too narrow of a side lot in a corner or whatnot, that a variance is always an option to take care of situations that you just can't plan for, right? Okay, so you guys mentioned
And-
variance.
Yeah, so within the code itself too, this is a continuation from the existing code on, let's see, letter C, fence height measurement. Exceptions to the standards of this section may be granted by the Planning Commission if warranted for safeguarding the public health, safety, and welfare. So that would fall in line with that variance section there.
So if somebody wanted to build a fence that didn't comply with the letter of the restrictions, are they applying for a variance or are they applying for a building permit? Because we're talking about a building permit if you want to go higher than.
They're applying for a variance.
Yeah, it would be a variance in this case.
So how much is the cost of a variance?
Off the top of my head.
$1,070.
So if they want to construct just a minor, if they want to just veer off of this, it's going to cost them $1,000 before they start building their fence. So the likelihood of them getting a variance is slim.
Commissioner Sheard?
Yeah, just personally, I think that's asking too much, especially just that corner and other little variances to have to do a permit and pay $1,000. I guess I'd rather see a little more latitude in here for people, because we want them to improve their homes and be able to put fences up. But besides that, I wanted to talk about D on page 29, the public areas. And this would be our museums, which of course, I'm thinking about the Lot House having a fence around it. And I'm wondering if we can consider restricting the type of fence that can go around a museum. Because there's nothing here that says that you can't put up a big wooden fortress type fence, or, I mean, there's nothing really protecting the aesthetic value of what could go around the Lot House. Because right here, this is just basically saying it can be 7 feet tall.
Well, with that one, I mean, I would assume and I would hope that the community has faith within their city staff and city governance to make that decision that a 7 foot tall wooden fence is a bad choice, especially for public safety too. And that's something that we could add in here, that fences in public areas, you know, have to be wrought iron or 50% opaque or something of that nature.
Is this reading that a fence around any of these public areas would have to go before development review?
It'll only have to go to development review if it exceeds 7 feet.
I think we need more protection than that. I think we need to have just more protection for fences in the historic district, especially around a museum.
Again, Mrs. Sheard, we all feel the same way you do, and we are not going to erect a fence around the museum, especially the lot home. That would not be appealing, one, and that would look like a fortress and be completely opaque. If we do end up proceeding with erecting a fence around the lot home, it would be fitting of the era of that facility, and it'd be less opaque than opaque. We would try to keep it a clean, beautiful wrought iron fence. We're not going to go exorbitant and ornate. However, we do still need a layer of protection around that facility. So,
I think that's great, and I agree. I would trust the current staff. But this is an ordinance that is going to transcend
right.
current staff. So that's all I'm saying. If we're looking at it, it seems important to have some protections in there.
So one idea is to add the following to that sentence. Subject to development review with regard to design and materials.
And that's an internal where staff would look at it. It wouldn't go to any planning
Be the
commission
development review
or
committee.
Development
Yeah.
review,
the committee.
yes, comprised of the two commissioners, planning commissioners.
And to the planning commission? Or just, you want to just keep it limited?
I think it should be limited to development review.
That doesn't require the variance though, right?
No, because it would fall within the code. Whatever the city would be proposing would fall within the code.
Okay, so say someone did that and they didn't like your response to it and they wanted to appeal, they can't appeal it to the planning commission without it being,
Well, the
without them
development
applying.
development review is also open to the public. So,
Yeah, I just struggle with it. We're basically, if it goes before development review, that is good. I would just want to err on the side of getting the most input that we could to make sure that we're making
well,
the
and
best
also
decision.
depending on the cost of the fence, it would go to city council for final approval. So,
Do we have any other discussion or questions for staff?
Mr. Chairperson, we do have one public speaker on this item, when you're ready for them.
Commissioners, okay with that?
Yep.
We'll open for public comment.
Kay Castro.
Good evening again. I am Vice Chair of the Park Commission. I am also on the Measure U Commission. We are very, very concerned about this proposal, and I would like to offer that absolutely the residents, the neighbors, the Downtown Historic District very much has an opinion on this. And it's very important that we do not take our museums and our local parks lightly, and we will not accept a cheap fence, wrought iron, whatever, around these historic monuments. We absolutely insist that we are given an aesthetically pleasing and historic fence. We understand how important the fence is for public safety, and that's where the Measure U money comes in. I do understand there's a grant for these fences, and that we have to spread that grant around to multiple parks. However, our Lot Park Sank Park lot home, very, very important to the entire gateway for our city. We cannot let this just have some wrought iron fence with the, I've seen the pictures, with the little, what's it called?
A curve.
Curve, looks like a concentration camp. We cannot have that. And I know, I see you, Dawn, I understand, I know you don't want it, I understand that. But I see sometimes the way that these not you, the way it goes, we have to have city approval, we have to have ordinance approval, we have to have code approval. Oh, we can't do it because there's a code, we can't do it because there's an ordinance. This is the time when you can take a stand and say that you are going to protect this historic monument and this historic place. I cannot get out of my dad's home at 3rd and Montgomery because there's a big truck parked there on that corner. I cannot see to go around because there's a truck parked there. And I know that you've worked, I think the Planning Commission has worked on 5th Avenue in trying to help some parking rules so that you can see and the obstruction is not there. This is not just a fencing issue. This is not just a visibility issue. This could possibly be a parking issue. We can't have big trucks parked there as well. So there are other options that I think that we can look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers?
Mr. Chairperson, that is the only speaker.
Thank you. Closed public comment. More discussion between commissioners. So is this, at this point, are we still making recommendations to staff, or are we, what's?
We can, yes.
And Commissioner Sheard, what would you,
I think.
have you settled on something?
How long did it take to do the sign ordinance? That had to take a long time, didn't it?
6 years.
Okay. So anyway, well, what Wes recommended for the public areas, what did you say, Wes? Did you write that down where it
Okay.
has to do with?
I'll repeat it.
Okay.
There are a couple of other things that should be mentioned here. Structures that are designated historic landmarks, fence change, I would consider as staff to be a facade change, and that then does go to the Development Review Committee for review in the downtown historic district. If it is a landmark built structure, then it comes to the Planning Commission for review. So the historic structures in our town are protected in that way in order to get public review. But here was the wording that I had suggested. May be erected to a height in excess of 7 feet, subject to development review, also with regard to design and materials.
I would just like to add, though, too, that the city council has already approved, should the funding be allocated for the fencing around the lot home. So they did approve the design of a wrought iron fence, but it's not the no-climb curvature, it's just a straight wrought iron fence. And again, it's for the protection of that asset.
And how tall is it?
Well, it depends on what the proposal comes back at. It would be 6 to 7 feet.
5 foot setback?
5 foot setback. And what we have existing, it does not meet the historic nature of that home.
No, I agree. We can do
So,
much better.
Yes.
We could do much, much better.
This will be an improvement, though it will be probably a little uncomfortable for folks at first, but it will be an improvement as to what's currently there that's falling apart. So,
It sounds like this fence code probably won't be passed in time even to affect that.
It's
Well,
already approved, she
it's
said.
already approved by city council.
Yes.
But,
So
so-
to base this all on that isn't,
No, but around other museums, I still just think it's important, and I'd like to have Wes's wording in there.
I agree with
And-
public places. I think sometimes schools try to go the cheap route.
Yep.
So,
Well, another example too is the Chinese temple. Even though
Yes.
it's not at the front, there is protective wrought iron fencing around that museum that is aesthetically pleasing, but it also keeps out the vagrants for the most part.
I was going to suggest, I mean, could you separate public areas and historic areas, like add another bullet point? So then, because, yeah, public schools, parks, those are very different from a historical site, in my opinion. So I feel like you need a different level of safety at a school versus maybe the law home. So I don't know if you can just separate those two.
If that's a pleasure of the commission, we certainly can.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. If you don't protect the historic buildings and you don't think about what they look like in their architecture, they will be destroyed in the way they look. The default will always go toward the more modern, more affordable solution, not the aesthetic one.
So, are there any other comments? Is staff okay with that? Any more clarification from any commissioners? Do we need to do anything else?
So suggested wording would be something like leaving item D alone, except taking out museums, and adding an item D1, something like fence changes at museums and historic structures shall go to the Historic Advisory Commission for review.
And you're defining historic structures as Oroville landmark structures?
As Oroville landmark, or we can add anything that's on a historic register as well.
Okay.
Yeah, if everybody's good with that. I mean, because, Rotary Park might get a fence around it, so you might want to keep, I don't know if you want to keep parks and stuff, school in there,
Now, that's in a historic district, isn't it? So that would come under that second section, right? Historic parks, Wes, would that?
Or Hewitt Park's up for renovation now, and that's outside of the district.
It's in the historic district. It
Is
does a
it?
little
It is.
dog
It
leg.
passes the railroad there?
Yep, it's in the
It does a little
district.
dog leg. So what about that, Wes, historic? In the
The-
historic district?
So far, it's still in item D, but if you want to move it to item D1, we certainly can do that. It's a pleasure of the commission. This then becomes a recommendation to go to city council.
And did you like the site triangle, or did we all,
It sounds like there's
Figure that
no, I don't have a choice on the site triangle. It has to be 30 inches. Is that what I'm hearing?
Site triangle must be there.
I imagine it was probably determined by a civil engineer, possibly the state of California.
But a variance is an option for $1,000.
I don't think so.
In the vision triangle, that would be tough to do.
So
We-
that means you can't put a wrought iron fence on your corner property in the historic district that's 36 inches tall. Is that what we're saying? Am I understanding that right?
It depends on your sidewalks, your street widths, your setbacks. It depends on a lot of things.
There's a lot of things.
That might not even clip your property on the corner.
50
There might
feet's
be-
big. It's long. That can go into half of your home.
Again, back to what Mr. Musler said at the beginning of the presentation, this ordinance is primarily for 6-foot fences in the front yards that are posing an issue with health and safety.
Right.
So if somebody was to erect a 36-inch fence in their front yard and it was within that site triangle, if it was an issue, we will absolutely address it through code enforcement. If it's a wrought iron fence and there's no issue with that site triangle and there's still visibility through that wrought iron fence, then it will most likely not be an issue. But it's a case-by-case basis in every scenario because of the varying lot sizes. So,
Yeah, exactly as Don had mentioned, it's a very case by case. Many property owners are very good about inquiring with the city as to what fence they can build. Oftentimes, I mean, even just last week, someone wants to know if they could just install a little fence to stop people from dumping on their property. He could have gone out there and built the fence and we never would have known, or, until we received a complaint from code enforcement. But many property owners know that we have beefed up our code enforcement, that if, we receive a complaint, an action will be taken. And it's a case-by-case situation. If there's no issues, on the corner of Montgomery and Pine Street where someone put a fence within their corner that's wrought iron, and the city's not receiving complaints about visibility and people aren't crashing or dying or doing whatever, then, that's a situation that staff understands, it doesn't quite meet it, but no one's being hurt.
We have a case right now, a code enforcement case, where someone built a chain link fence within that 50-foot, 6-foot chain link fence elsewhere in town, and we are requiring them to move it back so that it meets the distance triangle requirement.
Do we have other comments or a consensus to, would we bring this back, or would you modify it and bring it to council?
We would bring the revisions back. Wait, this is the,
Well, let's see if this
Yeah.
wording is acceptable to the commissioners.
so we'll bring it back one more time.
Item D eliminates parks and museums. Item D1 then reads, fence changes in landmarks, parks, museums, and historic structures shall go to the Historic Advisory Commission for review.
Or development review, or we're doing historic advisory?
Historic Advisory Commission,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
Okay. Wes, I would separate, because not all parks fall under the purview of the Historic Advisory Commission.
downtown historic parks in the downtown district.
So we could just say, downtown historic overlay parks to the Historic Advisory.
Okay. So if the commission chooses to adopt this, staff can tweak it so that it meets the intention of the commission, and then we can move it forward to the council.
Is a commission on a consensus to move it to council with those changes?
Yeah.
Yes, yes?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So, can we have then a motion, official motion in this case, because there was a resolution passed back in October to modify it accordingly?
Would somebody like to make a motion? How would you like the motion to be stated?
You could just make a motion to approve the changes mentioned by staff.
I'll move to approve the change.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please open the roll.
Motion carries with 5 yeses and 2 absent.
Thank you. I had heard some discussion earlier about possibly continuing item 5 until Commissioner Durling returns. What would the commission like to do?
Yeah, Carl has pretty strong opinions on the historic award program. So I just feel like he should be here to talk about them. And he has a lot of experience in putting together programs that have been very successful, so.
Is the commission okay with that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, sounds like we will continue item 5 until Commissioner Durling is able to attend the meeting. Are there any commissioner reports?
Yes, my commissioner report.
Okay,
Except for,
is that
there
part of the?
staff reports first?
Is that part of the commissioner report, or is that a historical advisory commission report?
It's a historical advisory commissioner report.
Okay, I guess we probably don't have any, do we have any commissioner reports for the planning commission? None. Historical advisory commission reports?
Yes,
Go ahead.
have one. And as Carl likes to say, we put on our historic advisory caps. And we talk about our wonderful historic structures. And so the one that I wanted to highlight today was Judge Gray's house, which is right at 1623 Bird Street. It's at the corner of Pine and Bird, and you have a picture from Butte County history book from 1882. You can see the unique cresting on the top. It's a Gothic Victorian, which is very unique. I think the lot home is supposed to be a Gothic Victorian, but it is nowhere near as dramatic as this structure. This home was built in 1875, and then it was threatened by a fire in 1877 that took out 3 houses on Bird Street that were adjacent to it. And the Ophir Hook and Ladder Company worked through the night and saved this home. Judge Gray, who built this house, was born in Maine in 1837. He attended college to study law. The day after he was admitted to the bar, he headed straight for California. In 1865, he moved to Butte County and got involved in our school district, and right here at the Bird Street School. He began teaching grammar school, and he became the school principal. And there's the picture of, that's like one of the first classes at the Bird Street School. And then you can see the original school structure there that later was added on to. During the 5 years that Judge Gray was with the school district, they completed the school and they added new and elegant furniture, and the school flourished as never before. In 1872, he established his law practice here in Oroville. It grew, and his practice was largely with procuring government titles to agriculture and mineral lands. In 1873, he was elected to the state legislature, where he was a member of the Judiciary Committee, which was in the process of reviving all the California codes. So he became an expert on California law. In 1874, he purchased interest in the Oroville Mercury, which is right down on Bird Street too. And in 1884, he was elected to district attorney. And during his term, he broke up many bands of outlaws. And there's a quote in the paper from 1913 that says, his reputation among lawbreakers served for a quarter of a century to make Butte County one of the most peaceful and law-abiding of counties. And then the thing that he's most famous for is being elected as a Republican superior judge. And he served in that position for 19 years. And this picture of his right here, that isn't a very good copy, but this was his favorite photograph of himself. In 1897, his wife died, leaving him with 2 adult children, Carlton and Ida. And as fate would have it, he lived across the street from Catherine Hecker, who was also widowed. Her husband, Fred Hecker, the bootmaker, had died in 1891. So Judge Gray moved into the Hecker house, and his son Carlton and his wife moved into Judge Gray's house. And you can still see Judge Gray's desk in that house today, which is just really amazing because that house was abandoned and had vagrants living in it. But there are still a lot of pieces of furniture that are there. He formed a law partnership with his son, Carlton. He died in 1913, and I just have to read what they wrote in the newspaper in his obituary. To him, the achievement of achievements in his life was the establishment of the olive industry and the planting of Mount Ida Grove. At a time when he was derided for the faith that was in him, he went out into the foothills and there planted the hillside to olive trees. His wisdom was far-seeing despite discouragement that always attends the course of the pioneer. He held firm to the faith that was in him and was finally rewarded by the knowledge that it was largely through his efforts that the olive industry was established here upon its present far-reaching basis. More than once, Judge Gray told the writer that to him this was the greatest achievement compared to which all other honors that came to him faded in insignificance. He also had at Mount Ida a spring there that people would go to drink that spring water, and it would heal them if they weren't feeling well. And for most of the time, you had to go there to get the water. But then they started bottling it, and there was controversy about that. Like, you can't really bottle the water, it won't have the same properties. But they wanted to start bottling the water and kind of deliver it like you would milk on your doorstep every day. And the last picture there is Judge Gray's home today. The inside is not in great shape, but pretty much the outside. I mean, it's just amazing to me that this home has stood through all of the abuses that it's been through. The PG&E wires just drive me nuts, how they're all tangled around it. But it's just so unique to have a Gothic Victorian like that from 1875 right here in downtown Oroville.
I'm completely out of order, but could that be included in the packet and pictures for the public?
Because I'm always late getting it in.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Shear.
We have some sitting over here.
Yes, they're right there.
Thank you.
I have to get.
Thank you.
It housed inmates. Yes, it was a jailhouse. I probably forgot that part. It was a jailhouse for I don't know how many years.
Until last year?
Until last year. Now it's empty. But it was a jailhouse, and it had up to over 15 men in it at a time. They had their wristbands on. They were in jail. It's that alternative living custody situation. It was pretty depressing to go inside. But it's just interesting to me, Judge Gray's house being a jail, but no longer.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Do we have any staff reports?
Yes, we do. All of you have received an email inviting you to the Planning Commissioner training put on by the League of Cities in March. And I don't know who's signed up for it. I think maybe Glenn, are you going?
I've received one request to attend. Warren, I don't know if you received it because I couldn't remember if it was before you had joined us.
Yeah, I've seen it. The middle of the week, short notice is a bit rough for me, but I'll keep my eyes out.
So this is the 2000 version of the handbook that you would likely get when you go there. It talks about all of the rules and regulations and laws and duties and limitations of a planning commissioner, so anyone is welcome to borrow it. We've also got a couple of other versions from other communities if you want to do that. I know Natalie's done that already in the past. So upcoming, the Development Review Committee will meet again on February 10th, and Commissioner Rossi is termed out, so we need a new Development Review Committee member. They typically meet on the second Thursday of the month at 1:30 in the afternoon, but we can move it back later in the day if that's works for other commissioners. I know it's a whole afternoon off for you, so we would like to get a new DRC committee member this evening if possible. So I'll throw it open to our chair to
Pick someone.
pick someone or get volunteers.
Well, if you can move it to 2, then I'd only have to take an hour off a month, and I could do it.
Okay, so you're volunteering at 2 o'clock?
At 2 o'clock, once a month, right?
Yes.
Yes, I could do that, as long as I don't have any big projects.
And you'll chair it? Because you have experience chairing.
Oh, the code says that Commissioner Sheard would now chair it.
Okay.
You usually
I tried.
move into the.
Okay.
I know in the past, it didn't seem like, it kind of seemed like it conducted itself, but that was quite a while back.
Okay.
So the item so far on the agenda for the meeting on February 10th is a revised Dutch Brothers project. After comments by staff and DRC have already been received, and they're revising that project. A new log deck by Trinity River. They have an existing log deck on Cal Oak, and they are moving it to 3007th Avenue. So we'll be bringing that to the Development Review Committee. It is permitted by right in the manufacturing zone, so it does not have to go to the Planning Commission. 2459 Foothill Boulevard, a residence is proposing a new 780 square foot detached garage in their front yard, so that will be coming to the Development Review Committee. We're still working on several zoning code updates to keep up with changes in state law, including accessory dwelling units, short stays, Airbnb types, and we'll move up the outdoor seating ordinance and to start working on that. On February 15th, the council has asked for a presentation on sober living environments, which I presume came to the council through public comment at the last meeting. So we're researching that. So we'll be looking at sober living environments and the city permitting system and county and state permitting systems thereof.
It actually came from a council member.
Oh, it did come from a council member, okay. The video's not yet posted on the website. Next Planning Commission will be a tentative parcel map for Tractor Supply at their new location across the street from Walmart on Feather River. The Dutch Brothers use permit, the massage ordinance, and if we have time, a downtown vacant building and enforcement program, which we should start working with ODBA on, and code enforcement. Lastly, there is a draft housing element update, which we received today for review. The general plan housing element is required by law to be updated, and we have to submit it to Housing and Community Development by June 30th. So we have the administrative draft that we got today for review. And that's the report.
I had a question. Is there some kind of a holdup with the Mavericks in the state with their encroachment there?
Yeah, so their encroachment permit has been under review for approximately a year now. We're hoping that it's in the final review stages. That's what Mavericks is hearing from Caltrans, that it's in the final review stages and that permit should be issued soon. But they keep hearing that periodically. So we're holding out for a yes there. But yes, that is because of Caltrans in the process.
I have one more question. What is happening with the burned out war zone looking hotel?
The Budget Inn.
Yes.
So they also went through code enforcement issues. There was a delay with the insurance company and the testing for lead and asbestos and the review. And then there was a delay with the permits for demolition because they had not provided some of the documentation, but now they are proceeding. So it just, those delays caused further entry by other transients, causing the second and third fires, and now they are on the right path. You'll see that some of the windows are taped up. They're encapsulated so that the lead and asbestos abatement can continue, and then the building can then be demolished.
Okay, thank you.
The entire building is going away.
It has to, right?
Not the entire building. They are proposing that the north and east wings be demolished, and the south wing will be demoed on the interior and then reconstructed. and a new roof system. That's what they're proposing at this point. It could change.
I had just one thing I wanted to make sure the commission was aware, and especially our downtown folks. At 2034 Montgomery Street, right next to Mugshots, Parkway Real Estate out at Chico is opening up a new satellite office here in town. So they'll be doing some work on that building, mostly just painting it, giving it a fresh white coat of paint, replacing the doors. But if you see any work going on there, it's just paint. They're not doing any structural changes. I know it's a historic building. It's not listed. It's nothing like that. But I believe it circa 1890s, that kind of time. So they're just painting it, and we'll have a new business downtown.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll adjourn the meeting of the Oroville City Planning Commission to February 24th, 2022 at 6 p.m.